Hello and welcome to Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. In each episode of the show, we hear the insightful confessions of a successful leader who wants to inspire others to live their professional and personal dreams. I am always keen to hear your feedback, particularly in relation to the kinds of leaders you would like me to invite onto the show in future. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rich insights from our special guest. Hello and welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. I'm delighted that Lotus Harkness has joined me in the studio today. Welcome, Lotus.
Hi, Andrew. Nice to be here.
Yeah, Lotus is in a different part of the world to me today, so it's quite late for her. So I really appreciate you being in the studio at this time of day. What we always love to do with our guests is to hear from them themselves about who they are. So let's start with that. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Lotus, formerly Sarah, but still Harkness. Nickname was Sharky back in the day at Salesforce. And I am a creative tech veteran, I would say, with 17 years formerly in the tech industry, and then prior to that in film and theatre. So I mushed the worlds together and here I am.
Excellent. And we all work hard when we're in this kind of profession. So when you're not working, so you can recharge your batteries, what is it that you go and do? Where's your happy place, or what is it you do outside of work?
Without question, it's the ocean. And I tend to live in my own little Disney movie in my head. So I'm no word of a lie at a cafe yesterday, coffee in hand. And I look over, it's at the beach, and there's a seal and then a dolphin. And then I walk down and there was stingrays. And I was like, this is definitely a Disney movie. This is not real. But it was, yeah, I try and do that as often as possible. Recharge.
Love that. And I'm by the, I wouldn't call it the sea. I've got an estuary near me. It's a river that goes down. I'm with you. Always take the dog out. So it's a fantastic place to be. We're very fortunate in that sense. So let's go back to childhood. Let's understand your first family system. And on reflection, how did that inform that early leadership style that you developed in your early adulthood?
Well, I was only child until 6, so I kind of was center of attention and then got miffed when my little brother was born. So I think it was probably the introduction of a second sibling and really having to kind of find my own feet, I think, in the jungle of life. And then it really was a narrative that pretty much stuck. So I would say resilience has been a real thread and is been in part because I've got a very strong mum and mother figure, and my dad's actually a Uniting Church minister. So I grew up in the church actually, and lots of theatre around that as well. So it's kind of those two things I think had a huge influence.
And when you think back then, can you remember the earliest time that you maybe had your first dream of what you wanted to become when you grew up?
Well, I have to share this really small anecdote, and there's going to be plenty of these. But I've seen footage of me about 2.5 years old yelling at a cat that just would not get out of the way. And I don't know why it was in my way, but it was like on the path. And because it wouldn't move, I had to sit down and have this negotiation with it. So I think that probably had something to do with an oppositional defiance that has subsequently brought me into I don't take no for an answer, and I really want to try to have an impact in the world if I can, and not for my own sake, but rather perhaps maybe either inspire or help other people in their journeys and agency.
Love that. And we've had other people on the show before that have grown up in those kinds of church environments or religious environments where obviously they were born into it in that sense. That were their parents that brought them into that. So what were some of the pros and cons for you, particularly as maybe a teenager as you were doing that?
Well, I would say a dichotomy of worlds. So I was in amateur theatre here in South Australia, and I swept the boards and also trod them. So it was a real kind of way and an outlet for me And I think I was always dramatic. I was born dramatic. I was born being a drama queen. And I just felt like that was a way and an outlet for me. So playing characters or daydreaming or, just living in my mind of creativity, that was a real highlight. But the church, I'd also do similar kind of shows. But I remember doing a show about teen suicide about 16 years old. And the kind of themes that came out of that were obviously really quite confronting. And I played this character, this girlfriend of the guy that doesn't make it. And it was, how do you even try to attempt to give a character like that real authenticity for an audience when you don't even understand totally the concept? So I think what probably enabled me to do it was I actually had my dad and the church and all that kind of real wholesome family side of things, and almost like a stewardship that I could go to not necessarily talk about the play, but maybe just understand, because the themes were quite triggering. And as an empath, you tend to take on, if you don't have those skills or strategic ways of being able to put boundaries up. So I think some of that probably bled through into, my own life journey and wrestling with different things. And I think the church played a huge role, still plays a huge role, even if I'm not necessarily actively religious. I'm incredibly faith driven, and it is in everything I do.
And the audience will be really curious to know, because some of them will relate to what you said there about at what point did you understand or become aware that you were an empath?
Look, I feel like that word even still confuses me, and I've almost kind of tried to distance myself slightly in the last few years, because I almost spent the first half of my life, coming up to 40. Just turned 40, which is a huge milestone for me, by the way, considering we didn't think I was going to make it here. So yay me. I'm probably the most excited person to have ever turned 40 ever. I'm like, yes.
Congratulations.
But that whole first half, I think, has probably been trying to work that out and answer that question. Coming now into the future, I think my whole focus is, I've totally forgotten the question now, Andrew. Sorry, can you ask it again?
Yeah, no, it's when did you first maybe discover or feel that you were that empath, even though you've distanced yourself from the word?
Oh,
You mentioned it when,
I don't like
being
the
that way.
word.
No.
Sorry, that's my brain.
What
That's
word would
stroke
you
brain.
use?
And you
Yeah.
and I really have had a stroke, so I'm allowed to say that. So you can edit that out if you like or not. I really don't mind. But I do tend to have this short-term memory. I call them zaps, where I have to sometimes remind myself what the question was. And it's also ADHD. I apologize. So empath, I struggle with the word because I think it's like just being aware of other people's vibes, and it's hard to explain that to people. For one, it makes you super vulnerable to taking on other people's things. So I think I didn't even really become aware of it fully until recently, and even then, I still doubted: am I, or am I a narcissist? Because the line is so easy, it's easy to cross. And then I kind of realized I don't think I'm one or the other. I think I, at all times, in all moments, can choose to be one or the other rather than I am. So I don't necessarily identify with the word anymore, because I try to just make the right decision in the moment now.
And
It's
other
not
people I've
always going to
spoken
be
to, no,
one
no,
thing. Yeah.
exactly. And it's a spectrum, isn't it? A lot of people I've spoken to who have shared this with me in the past, their view is that, all humans have the ability to be like this. It's whether we tap into, whether we really move into, whether we actually want to be in it. And some people fall into it or just flow into it very easily without even necessarily trying, and others don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I wouldn't say I would wish that awareness on anyone, because it's actually not like the self reflection, I call them the crucibles I had to experience to even become that aware of my own internal self in that way was not fun. So I wouldn't wish that on anybody, actually. Like, I'd almost rather be a totally oblivious narcissist, because then, and maybe I am, I don't know, who's to say? It's subjective, right? So who knows?
I'm loving this conversation already. So we're getting really deep, and we may come to some of those
I'm
points
going to
that you
get
mentioned
deep,
before.
Andrew. I'm sorry.
Exactly. That's what we want. So let's just go back to the child. I've got one last question about that before we move into how that shaped you, that environment, that resilience you talk about, and that don't take no for an answer, and really be dogged in that sense. But who were your other role models that you can remember around that time as you were maybe late teens?
Without question, the Spice Girls. I have to say that, because all 5 of them
Absolutely.
had their own flavor. And if you put one together, I was like, I want to be that woman. That woman, if you put all of them together, that's pretty much me in a bottle. So I still love the Spice Girls. But I had a best mate of mine, Nat. She's still my best mate. 27 years we've been friends. And she's the devil's advocate. And she was definitely someone I looked up to, but also associated with. So that's like my inner circle. From an external perspective, it's, you know, all these incredible women and men who kind of blaze the trail in front of me. And so I was a huge fan of Benioff the moment I opened Salesforce in 2008. And I think his journey probably resonates with me the most, like Beyond the Cloud, the guerrilla marketing they used to do to Microsoft. Like, it was all tongue in cheek, up your bum. Like, I love it. Like, it's just, it's very cheeky. And I'm not going to lie, I have an Ohana tattoo. So I'm, you know, I'm full fangirl, and I always have been. Like, I really mean it. I'm so hardcore nerd. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I think probably, you know, I kind of like saw them as superstars, you know? So yeah.
Now I'm curious as you moved out. So I'm getting this sense of, in terms of those teen years, and obviously until your sibling came along, obviously you had this safety where you had the ability to escape into creativity in terms of all the work you're doing around dramatics, etc., and also that sense of belonging within family and church. So what was it like for you as you transitioned then into adulthood, where you moved particularly away from the family?
Well, I moved out at 17, so I kind of went. I think I chose more of that creative pathway. So if you will, it kind of diverged a little bit. I moved to Melbourne from Adelaide, and, you know, did the starving artist thing for quite a long time. And as we all we do it all the time, peaks and troughs. But it was little studio apartment, and, you know, I feel like that transition into a different time or era of my life was like a real experimental, working stuff out. You know, I had a breakup over in Melbourne, and I kind of had this decision point: do I stay? Do I go? I didn't know anyone, and I went, stuff it, I'll stay, and ended up directing a play at Chapel Off Chapel in Melbourne. And I was like, how do I even pull that shit up? I don't know. I just did it. It was crazy. It was so much fun and crazy. And had the age come, and they did a terrible review. It was such a bad play, but it was so much fun to do something with all of that emotion and energy. And I think that actually is, you know, to your question earlier about leadership, that is a one consistent piece that I've always been able to do, is take absolute garbage and turn it into something. Even if it is some other garbage, it's still something. Like, this transformative component. It's you know, someone else's trash is treasure, and I feel like it's that transformation. I've done that all my life.
Now, give us some insight into that, because when I hear this from other leaders that have been in this kind of space, some of them find it effortless and they have techniques to do that, almost like a manifestation type technique. Others sometimes find it incredibly challenging and painful, and yet still the outcomes are fantastic. So what about you? What was it like for you during these transformations?
I mean, obviously it's hard. It's not effortless per se, but where it was effortless was when I knew I was on the right track. So where I wasn't meeting resistance, then I was in this state of, okay, I could not autopilot, but a little bit of autopilot, where I could relax a little bit more. I wasn't feeling so controlling or tight around whatever was going on or my future. I just could flow with it. So I feel like where I could do that more, that enabled transformation faster, where I held on to emotion, where I didn't just feel it. I got quite good at just, instead of fight, flight, or kind of fear, I would face. So I started honing that without realizing it. And that came in really, really handy, particularly, fast forward down the track. That's really been necessary to literally save my life. So I'm grateful I learnt that through those pretty crap experiences, but they're like character building. So I feel like I've just had a lot of series of character building.
Yeah, and that's what
And
we
the
want to hear about as
character's
well,
like
because
a bit unfortunate.
well, we're always a work in progress, aren't we? And actually, in a way, it's what doesn't kill us makes us stronger in that sense, doesn't it? So we'll come. How would you summarize your 20s for us? If we were to summarize that decade of your life in terms of what was going, how would you summarize that?
Imagine like Wolf of Wall Street, full tech. Like if I was a tech bro, that was my 20s. Like that was my brain. Like I worked for Marketo and GitLab and Dropbox. Like I was just freaking losing it in tech. It was so much fun. And I was in sales and marketing, so I was go to market. So I was a bit, I was like the only girl all the time. Like it really was I call them the glory days, because I feel like there's this group of women who had to persevere through a moment where it wasn't as socially acceptable to be in those roles, and then kind of create space for now an explosion of just normalcy. And I'm so happy to have, like, I was part of FemForce in the early days. We called it FemForce. And it was, these trailblazing women just pushing forward and, hey, we can do go to market and we can do strategic accounts. It really was a bit like that, because there was all kinds of things that go down, in the beginning stages of anything. Yeah, it was wild. So my 20s was like a full on 10 years of Wolf of Wall Street. And yeah, I loved it. Really loved it.
Some people have their life determined by the things that happen around them. It's those events around us that shape what happens next. What was the most pivotal moment for you in your 20s, do you think, that shaped the future for you?
I ate some humble pie when I was about 27, and I really put the brakes on. So, okay, had a great time, learned, had come out of drama and theatre and moved into tech. So I was, early days into tech. So I was probably about 6 years in by then. I was still really kind of early in the career stage, but I'd started working for all these different tech companies. But I've lost the question again, Andrew. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. What was the
my brain.
pivotal
It's
moment? No, it's fine.
Yeah,
Pivotal moment. And you said 27.
27. Marketo. Sorry. If I lose my train, it's because it hits this tiny bit in the basal ganglia that got a bit donko in a stroke. So it is, apologies. It's my deficit, but I actually quite like it because it's endearing and I'm okay with it. So if I
Excellent.
ask, please just bear with
Absolutely.
me. If that's the only bit about me that happens after a stroke, I got away pretty scot-free. I'm not going to lie. That's pretty good. So yeah, 27, I hit the brakes a little because I was working my guts out, the 80-hour weeks. It was getting out of control. It's like doing 5 different roles in one. And it was just this perfect storm. And, one of the biggest, most pivotal moments was probably biting off more than I could chew. And I really did at that stage. Probably went toe to toe with the wrong person. And it wasn't that I had done anything wrong. It's just I had so much going on that I became vulnerable and I didn't even know about it. And I think that was the first time I realized how easy prey we can sometimes be, not as a victim, but just, I feel like sometimes creative minds and different or strong-hearted people without necessarily the wherewithal to recognize it at the time can be in positions where they then later on realize, oh, that was not a good situation. You're not going to do that again. You've got to learn from that. So it was one of those, and it really, that had such a significant impact on the rest of my life, that one moment.
What happened after that?
After that, I took myself to Paris because, as you do, eat, pray, love. And I did. And then I came home for a bit, and it was one of the smartest things I did, found myself again. And I really, really rate that. It's a pattern. Often see the world and then always find your way again. I think as I've gotten older, I've realized you don't have to keep coming back. You can find that wherever you are and create that for other people. But I feel like in the beginning, it was that coming back home really gave me my grounding again and put my feet firmly back on the ground before I got brave enough to step out again.
And let's talk about that, because many people do what you have talked about, whether that's a retreat, whether it's to take some time out, whether they're forced to because of health or whatever, and they have this realization about what they want their life to be like for the next 5 or 10 years, and yet they still have trouble making that happen for themselves. So talk to us about those first maybe couple of years after you'd made that decision that you were going to live your life differently.
It was hard, and it was, again, a different set of crucibles. Like, I call them crucibles, but it's really just the burn of doing the hard stuff. Like it's hard stuff to put your pieces back together when, either you've damaged yourself or you've put yourself in a situation that has been damaging. Either way, where there's damage, where you cop artillery in any way, shape or form, I feel like that putting the pieces back together is always something that you're doing. I think even now, it's a long, long, long ways down the track. And every now and then there are things that come up or pop up, and you go, rather than holding on to the damage, I tried to, over time, utilize the damage and then put it somewhere constructive. That was like one part of the kind of machine that I built in myself, but the emotion I just allowed. So anytime there was something that was remiss or reminding me of that situation or just anything, like just feel it and not deny it. That was really important. That's probably the number one thing that I would recommend. Like, don't deny it. It's not fair to not let yourself feel, even if you're angry or, like, I think that's the other thing too, is not stopping yourself from feeling whatever the hell you're feeling. It's just how you deal with that feeling, I guess, or care for it.
I love it. And what that reminds me of is a book that I'm rereading again for the second time. And when I reread books, I see it through a different lens, of course. But I'm thinking of The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which, he talks about you only have this moment. And when we are feeling the things you're talking about, which is normal for us to feel, it's the intelligence within that, and to recognize that it's separate to us in that sense, and we can actually look at that and then be curious about it. So I love what you're telling us. So as I asked you the question before, bear in mind that's what you did, you regrouped. It's very difficult to put the pieces together, but how would you describe your 30s? Summarize that for us.
Entrepreneurial, very. That's where the kind of founder brain started kicking in. So I went and worked for, first of all, had kids. So I never do things by halves. So I had 3 kids in 4 years. The time I was 35, I had 3 kids and started a business. But before starting the business, I'd had that final kind of big tech go to market, pre-IPO to IPO. And I've done that 3 times now. I've done 3 pre-IPOs to IPO go to markets. And mate, it's the most fun ever. It is so much fun to like go from scrappy startup-y, you're sitting on the floor making calls, to now we have to do reports and be serious. And I actually really love that. That transformation resonates with me so much. So I've come to fall in love with that. And starting Cattle Dog, which is consulting business I had, it basically was that. So I just combined and mashed DevOps and revenue or go to market in my brain, and we ended up with RevOps. And I was really trying to make it a thing. It was a lot of fun to try and make it a thing, but it was like the bottling of how you could do continuous improvement, continual development, like CI/CD as a development strategy. Why can't you apply that in go to market? So I kind of mushed the two, and we ended up doing that. So it was a lot of entrepreneurial stop starts, you know. Oh no, I lost you for a sec. It just paused. I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Just pause from it. You can carry on.
Yeah, the 30s were entrepreneurial, having fun, building stuff, testing, and seeing what sticks and what doesn't. It was fun.
Thank you. And what comes to mind for me now is, bear in mind you've been involved in tech and all of the business around that and the excitement as well, the transformation. Very different when you're an entrepreneur. You have to be resourceful in different ways. So what would you say was the major difference when you started up your own business in terms of where you needed to lead yourself in particular?
The moment you hire first staff and that kind of floor goes out from underneath you, where you, all of a sudden you're responsible. I felt like even before I had kids, that scared the crap out of me, because I had kids parallel to starting a business. So I was work from home mom, and we literally started it in the shed. It was like it was a proper story. It was a really good origin story. But it was juggling all of those things and all of those roles. But I felt that visceral responsibility and the gut wrenching, like, fear of messing up, the same way I feel about my kids. I felt that with this thing that we were creating in the staff. So, you know, for the entire time, there was these parallel motherings coming out of me and blossoming out of me, these new ways of operating that I hadn't had to do, obviously, under the wing of like a larger company or anything like that. So it was terrifying, but really fun, and something I'm really proud of, you know, the ability to, one, juggle both, because I didn't think I could do it. And I'm really proud that I was able to juggle both at that time, still juggle both, but also that I didn't drop those balls. Those, like, they're just innate as part of like a caring responsibility. I think that in leadership, it's not like you treat your staff like they're your kids, but there's a sense of duty of care. That's the words that I really want to reinforce. Like, the duty is to them and their families. Like, it's not just a number. It's really critical that we have that humanity at work. So that became a real big thread through everything we did, and even the values of the business that I certainly tried to instill.
Thank you. And in terms of your 30s, what was the big external event or something that happened outside of your control, again, that determined partly how you move forward from there?
Andrew, you're asking the tough question. Well, when I turned 37, had my third baby, and within 2 months post that my youngest is Rocket. Post him being born, I ended up starting what then went on to be 3 years, 26 surgeries, 3 brain surgeries, a stroke, and a whole lot of shits. And then all while we're having a pandemic. So we're in double maelstrom, and I'm also trying to be a mum and run a business. So that was probably the big event. And it wasn't necessarily one big event. I had my son, and I was in a lot of pain after that cesarean, and that kind of happened in parallel to going getting glasses, and they said your optic nerves are raised. And what? And so there was a very fast neuro path that I ended up on, which eventually converged into what happened to be just something caused from a car accident I had, and an injury in my neck. And it literally caused a whole cascade in my whole body. So I have autonomic dysreflexia, and it's life-threatening. You can go into a coma. I have once, and it probably created this just perfect storm of shit for 3 years for my whole family. It ended up in divorce. Like, it really was a horrific good 3 years. So that was the end of my 30s.
And what was it that, I know there's probably a number of things, but what was it that enabled you to get through that really tough time, everything you've described? What was there in terms of enabling you to get through it all?
Look, I don't want to overshare or traumatize anybody, but I will tell you that the metabolic acidosis was in a very short coma. It really did that. I could hear everything around me. Like, I know some people talk about not or do, or you can. I could hear everything. And for me, I was like, I'm here. Like, I was giggling in myself, even though I wasn't moving or talking or not breathing. You know, there was a real fear with that. But then there was this part of me that was like giggling that you couldn't kind of, I was kind of giggling that I was still here. So it was this real cheeky defiance that didn't leave. And I thought, oh, so maybe that's just who I am at the absolute core. Maybe that's just who I am. And then for the rest of that pathway, and it was May 22 when that happened. And I had had brain surgery that year, bowel surgeries. I had had a lot happen in that year, and I was still on that journey. We were just coming out of like we were just getting visitors. So there was like no visitors in hospital. You know, it was just, I'm going to call that my, wander through the wilderness, because that was horrific and I was alone. So it was just horrible. But that moment was the turning point. Pretty much when that happened, I came out, and no word of a lie, I walked out of the hospital. I've got the photo, and there's a tawny frogmouth, which is like a kind of owl, sitting on. First of all, they don't really come close to you because they're quite timid and they're very shy. This thing had so much audacity. It was sitting right in front of me, and I just stood, and it was like stunned mullet staring at it, and it's looking at me, and it kind of almost like I had a smile kind of thing. I mean, that sounds crazy, but it was this standoff with this owl for about a minute, and enough to get 3 or 4 photos of it. And I'll never forget, like, one, the fact that I walked out of that hospital after what had happened. And I mean it, they basically went, do you want to go? Because once I'd come to and I was okay, they actually said, there's not much else we can do. Go and see. Okay. So it was just, weird anyway, but this owl just became this overarching theme of like, all right, this is more than me, and I need to just crack on and try to get better, not just for my kids, but for whatever reason. There has to be a reason why I'm not popping the motor coil here. There's like a clear sign that there's some challenge, but I'm really grateful. Those are not things I would wish on anybody, but I'm really grateful. I know and have that frame of reference. It's a really unique, it's a really severe, but it's a very unique perspective, and I can go there anytime and draw from that well. And I'm really grateful for that, because I needed that even now. So yeah.
I'm grateful for you sharing that. I really appreciate it. And that leads into our final question for you really today, Lotus. So I want to understand now, because you are still here and you've obviously got a lot of life ahead of you, because I'm a lot older than you, what is it that you're going to do? What's the legacy that you're now going to leave behind now you've got the opportunity to do that?
Well, this is the exciting part. I have mushed my worlds together, as I do, and combined the creative with the tech, and started a little agency, and a creative agency for tech, and basically taking all that experience from helping organizations optimize and bring to life their agency in their business. For me, it's now all about impact. So why would you go and look at anything in your business? I want to work with organizations, and have been, of impact, that are doing incredible things in the world and really help bring their agency audacity to life. And that's the new baby, really. Is like a new version of all of the things combined into this labor of love that, I just sit there and make characters and ideas all day. And like, it's actually getting to then build that in the tech that I love as well. Is like, is heaven. I'm nerding out all the time. I have this lab that I've created, and I'm like, I'm in heaven.
Superb. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. And if anyone wants to get in contact with you because they've heard the story today and want to make contact or collaborate with you, or work with you in some way, what's the best way for them to contact you, Lotus?
You can contact me at audacity@audacityme.com, and I'm also on LinkedIn as Lotus Harkness, and X as M3 Audacity, like me Audacity.
What I've loved about the story today is listening to that version of you when you were younger, around that, finding a way, having that cheeky audacity, obviously where the name has come from, and that then driving you through those difficult times when you're in the coma, which just astounds me in that sense, how that kept you
that's
going.
Mad.
And then
That's a whole
now
other
just
person.
but just enabling that for the future as well. So Lotus, has been really lovely to have you show. I really appreciate you coming on late at night as well, where you are, and thanks again for being with us today.
Thank you so much for letting me ramble on, Andrew. I appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader. You can access all previous episodes of the show at confessionsofaSuccessfulLeader.com. If you are interested in finding out more about conscious leadership and self-coaching, just type in Andrew Tallents into LinkedIn or your favorite browser, and you'll find my contact details and all the content that you need. Until next time, don't forget to stay present, curious, and above all, conscious.